everybody. I'm Irene, teaching Feldenkrais with the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation. And this month we've been working on posture. And I was thinking about posture again from the very first day when we talked about why posture matters. And one of the reasons that posture matters is because our arms and our whole shoulder girdle sits on top of the rest of ourself. And if the underneath posture is off or not working well, then the arms stop functioning the way we want them to. And we start developing shoulder problems and the lack of the ability to do things we want to do with it. And I was going online this morning looking for some animated tutorials of arm and shoulder function, which I'm going to show at the end of the class today. And none of them, not one of them, mentioned that the function of what's underneath the arms matters for the function of the arms. And so I just realized there's a niche out there that I need to start making some videos and showing the connection of everything. So we always start with a measurement move beforehand and some scanning. So just as you're sitting there, think of the distance between your two shoulders and imagine there was a band of elastic across the front of you and across the back of you. And it's your skin and your muscles that make up that connection. And close your eyes for a moment and sense if that band feels tighter and shorter on the front of you or the back of you. It's a strange feeling thinking of ourselves as, are we stretchy or not? But you'll feel that one side feels probably a little longer than the other. And just notice that for the beginning of the class. And then you could think of another piece of elastic in the front and back of yourself going from your neck to your pubic bone in the front and the base of your neck to your tailbone in the back. And feel if one side of that line, the front line or the back line, feels tighter than the other one. And does one feel longer? Okay. Because those two sensation comparisons give you a good sense of how your torso is involved in your posture. And we'll see if that changes over the course of the hour. Okay. And then let's talk about some functional movements. Now, let's just take an arm and go as if you wanted to brush your hair. I know there's a few of you who don't have much anymore, but imagine you have hair and you want to brush your hair. Okay. And just feel, you can close your eyes as you brush your hair and feel what movements you feel in your sit bones. Is there any movement in your sit bones as you brush your hair? Do your knees move forward or backward? And if you had long tresses flowing down your back, how far could you comfortably, remember this is all about comfort, not pushing past what's comfortable, how far back could you brush that hair? Okay, and put your arm down for a minute. And I need you to look honestly at what you just did. Did you stay in comfort or did you push a little past it? Today's lesson is really an important one to stop before you get to the end of what you can do. To sense where, like I could probably brush my hair there, but for me, right about here, it starts feeling thick and just a little harder. And in all the lesson today, don't ever go past that thick place. Okay. Now, how about brushing your teeth? If when you're brushing your teeth and you bring, okay, put your arm down again. And we're going to play with an important concept, which is going slow. Brush your teeth in slow motion. So you lift your hand to your mouth slowly and sense if your weight changes on your sit bones or your feet at all as you bring your arm up to your mouth. If the weight goes more over into that sit bone that you're lifting the arm, if you shift a little forward or backward. Okay, good. And now I'm just going to throw out a couple random things that some people like to do. Some people like to go fly fishing, and you could just in slow motion think about taking your pole and coming forward to throw the fly. And some of you may never have tried this motion before, but we'll just imagine it. Okay. And does this movement stop at your shoulder, or does it go down to your sit bones and your feet somehow? Okay. How about throwing a ball? You want to throw a ball across the room. What are your sit bones doing? Are they involved in it? Or for those of you who wear a necklace, reaching back to try to do the clasp on the necklace. And for many of us, that used to be something that was easy, but now it's like, you know, I want a nice big clip or something I can just put over my head, thank you. Or scratching your back. Notice where on your back you can scratch. And where do you have to like go find the wall and rub against it if it's itching? Okay, so those are our measurement moves today. And we're going to play with the movements of our scapula, our collarbone, and a little bit our shoulder blades. But let's wake up the collarbones today. So find the notch in your neck. And then there's a little bump on each side of that notch. And that's the beginning of the collarbones. And the collarbones are shaped like a letter S. They curve a little forward, and then on the back side, they curve a little, the curve goes the other way. And they end up right at the hard part on the top of your shoulder, right where the bone is close to the surface. Okay. And then we're going to play a little bit with the shoulder blade. And the shoulder blade, you can perhaps reach over, and if you wiggle your arm a little, you might be able to feel the top of the bone moving. Or if you reach under your arm, you can, right about there, you can feel one edge of your shoulder blade. Okay. And those two bones together are what allows you to do the basic movements of the arm. And on the other side, reach and see if you can find some bone up at the top. And then the other side of the under your arm. Yeah. Okay. And rest your fingers, make your fingers like a little scissors and put them along the length of one of your collarbones. And lift your shoulder a little bit. And feel how the collarbone moves. You could perhaps leave your thumb right on the joint between your sternum and your collarbone, and you'll feel that joint moving. I find it easiest with my hand to reach across my sternum to the opposite side. It's kind of awkward to reach the one on the same side. Good. And let's try the one on the other side. So you find that notch in the middle. You can put your thumb on that joint and your fingers along the side of the bone as you lift your shoulder a little bit. Good. Okay. Rest for a moment. Now, if it's comfortable, bring your arms up to the sides And if it's not comfortable, bring them up maybe just a little bit down by your sides. So my arms could either be low or high. And roll your thumbs toward the floor. And feel, what are your collarbones doing when you roll your thumbs to the floor? And again, just go as far as is comfortable with that, okay? And then roll your thumbs backward like you want it to point behind you. And just notice, what's your range for how far you can go forward and backward with your thumbs. Okay, and rest for a moment. We're going to do a movement that, for those of you who have been here before, we've played with our sit bones, and let's just wake the sit bones up by reaching your hand under and feeling the sit bone for a moment. And the sit bone has a round part, and that's probably the first part you'll touch with your fingers. And if you move your fingers, well, if you move your fingers a little forward, or if you tip a little forward in your chair, you can find a way that you're sitting on more of the flat part of the sit bone. It's probably, for finding that flat part, it's probably easy to take your fingers out and lean forward a little. And you've got that, the sit bones make a triangle. Let's see if I can show it a little bit on the skeleton that's behind me. That, oh, where's my black pen, my black pointer? Got a yellow pencil. Yeah, never mind, you can't see it that well in there. But the front part where the sit bones go forward, they come to a point, and that is right under your, they join kind of to make your pubic bone. But there's a couple-inch flat part between the rounded part of the sit bone and the back. And if you tip a little forward, everybody take your knees nice and wide so that there's room for your belly, so that you can tip forward and relax your belly as you tip forward. That gets you more onto the front part of your sit bone. Okay. So we're going to go back and forth a few times between rounding our body. So if you now go back on the round part of your sit bone, tip your pelvis. Imagine somebody has a hold of the back of your pants. Pull your belly in and look down a little bit. And then let your sit bones grab your chair, and they propel you so you come forward, and then relax your belly, arch your back, look up a little bit. And come back to neutral. If you're sitting back in your chair, come sit forward right on the edge of the chair, because that way you have room to do these movements. Otherwise, the chair gets in the way. So if you look behind you, you want to have at least 6 inches between your low back and the chair. Good. And now, without moving your sit bones or in place on the chair, reach your waist back as if your waist wanted to touch the chair. And notice how it just makes you want to look down a little bit. And then bring your waist as far away from the chair as you can comfortably go, spreading your chest to look up. Okay, good. And now put your arms out to the side like we did before, and roll your arms and see if your thumbs are going a little further than they did before. So not so much a circle with the arms. I see some people doing a circle. It's more just a plain, my arm is out and my thumb goes down or my thumb goes up. And with the arm straight, some people will be able to bring their thumb up or back or further, but it requires some motion in the chest to do that. So rest for a sec. And put the arms out again like that. And this time, do the two motions together. So you roll and try and reach your waist back into your chair as you roll your thumbs down. And then tip forward, come onto the flat part of your sit bones, look up and roll your thumbs backwards. And go back and forth like that a few times. And then rest. And then put your arms up again, and we're going to do what I call the weird Feldy moves of when you do something that's opposite the way it feels like it should be done. So push your waist back towards your chair and look down, but roll your thumbs upward. And then come forward, arch your back, and your thumbs go downward. So they're doing like the exact opposite you think they ought to do. And do that a few times. You round your back, you roll back on that round part of your sit bone, and your thumbs go up, and then you arch your back, push forward with your chest, but take your thumbs down. Good. And rest for a moment. All these little rests give the brain time to incorporate what it's learning. And now just put your arms out to the side and roll your thumbs down and roll your thumbs up and see if they're going a little further, a little easier than they were before. And rest for a moment. Okay, let's put the arms up again. And this time, roll one thumb down and one thumb up. Am I saying that right?
Put your back against the chair and just do the arm movement.
So one thumb goes down and one thumb goes up. And then switch them and see if it's more comfortable if you look at the hand with the thumb up, so that there's a part of the switching where your head is going toward the thumb that's up. And your hands, if it's, some of you are pushing your arms way back, I find if you keep your arms a little bit in front of yourself as you do this, you don't have to be pushing back hard. And rest for a moment. Now, did anybody notice what happened in your sit bones as you did that? Most of us are so busy trying, it's like, I'm just trying to coordinate this movement. I'm not paying attention to the rest of myself. So we're going to do it again, paying attention to the sit bones. So the arms are out to the side, and turn your head and look toward the thumb that's going up. And then switch the thumbs and turn your head to look. And see if there's this little subtle shifting of weight from one sit bone to the other. And let's begin to exaggerate that. So as the thumb goes up and you look at it, reach a little bit with that hand. You could imagine that hand has a lightsaber in it and you're poking with it, or a fencing sword. So the back hand turns palm down and the front hand turns palm up as you reach a little. Okay. And rest for a moment. Let's try that without the arms. So just with the body, shift your weight to one sit bone and then shift to the other. And feel, what are your ribs doing when you shift your weight? There are always two ways to shift on your sit bones. One way, you keep your spine and your ribs very still. In fact, let's all try this. Hold your breath, keep your ribs and your spine straight. And as you shift onto a sit bone, your head will go further than your arms, or your head goes further than your waist. Try that a little bit. And then the other way, we make our spine like a letter C, and you can shift your weight, but it's your middle. You're reaching with your ribs, like you're trying to push the wall over with your ribs, but you're leaving your head in the middle. And try going the other way. Usually we go our easy way first, and on the other way, I find it helps if I tip my head. So for me, my hard way is going that way. So I'm tipping my head away from the way I'm going, and then aiming my ribs to go over that way. It's like your ribs. You could imagine you had your hands sticking right here from your ribs, and you're trying to take that part of you sideways to reach. Okay. And put your hands out to the side again. And now do the same motion we were doing of turning your hand palm up and poking with the sword. And feel, does it feel better if your head kind of goes with your hand, or if your ribs go with your hand? See if you can feel the difference between leading with the head and leading with the ribs on your side. Which one feels safer? Like if you have to pull your sword thrust, you can get back to the middle easier. Because if I tip with my head going forward, you see if you feel your body tense up a little bit. But if you poke with your ribs leading the way, it's a little easier to spring back to the middle. Okay, rest for a moment. My guess is most of you picked your easy direction to do first. Let's do it on the other one. So the hands come back out. You put your sword in your other hand. The other hand is palm down. And you try reaching with your head first, and your hand comes along, or reaching with your ribs first. And if this movement isn't comfortable in your body, you could leave your arms down by your side. You could imagine it. You could have an imaginary sword strapped onto your rib cage and push that imaginary sword with your ribs. Good. I'm seeing a lot more torso movement now as I look at people as they're doing it. So you don't want to push that sword with your ear. Try pushing the sword. Let's everybody put your arms down and push the sword with your ear, and feel how there's only so far you can go before you'll then tip over. Then put the sword on your shoulder, like it's sticking straight out of your shoulder, and try and push the sword that way. And then put it down lower in your rib cage and push the sword that way. And then strap the sword right to your hip and push the sword with your hip. And feel how that really makes you go up over that sit bone. And rest for a sec just after you've done one side of that. And see if one side feels a little more relaxed than the other. And then let's strap the sword on our other ear and push the sword with your ear. May I never have to fight that way. My neck would not like that. There's not much power there. And then strap the sword to your shoulder. And then strap the sword to the middle of your rib cage on the side. And you push with that a little. Strap the sword to your hip. And there's a way that your other sit bone has to lift up a little bit in order for your hip to be able to move. You could put your hand on your hip. And then if you think your elbow is the sword, you can feel how your hip moves your hand and your elbow moves a little bit in space. Good. And rest for a moment. So there was a request to show the collarbones on the skeleton. I'm not sure how long that's been up. I just noticed it. And we will be doing that at the end. But I want you to have the internal sensations first, and then we'll look at the picture and we'll all try and move along with the animation that I'm going to show at the end. So now put your arms up again. And if that's comfortable, so not up high, but just straight out, maybe a little lower than your shoulders. Grab your two swords, one in each hand, and rotate your hand palm up and reach and push. And then rotate the other hand palm up and reach and push. And feel as you do that, as one arm is rotating one way and the other arm rotates the other, that there's some interesting sensations right in your spine between your two arms. And there's a little bit that one shoulder goes forward and one shoulder goes backward. The hand behind you, it's very easy to ignore the hand behind, that it's going down, pointing down. So you might have to consciously go, hey, hand behind, what are you doing? Rest for a moment. And we're going to try a funny Feldy move where you start out with the two swords again, but this time you look toward the hand behind you as you're poking with the hand in front of you. So you're poking one way, but you're looking at the hand that's palm down. Be gentle with yourself. This is a strange move to look at the backhand. Okay, good. And then just put your arms out and try rolling your thumbs like we did at the beginning, and see if more of your body is involved. If you can feel how your chest, when you roll your thumbs down, your chest can lower there. And when you roll the thumb up, the chest pushes forward. And pause for a moment. And put your fingers on one of your collarbones. And put your arm out to the side. And roll your thumb and feel how your collarbone is moving. And then you could put the hand right on top of your shoulder and feel how your shoulder blade is moving. And if that might be uncomfortable for the hand reaching, you could just imagine your shoulder blade. When you roll your hand back, the shoulder blade kind of creeps down your spine or your ribs and moves closer to your spine. And when you roll your thumb down, the shoulder blade kind of comes out from under in the back there. Okay, rest for a moment. And try a motion now of brushing your hair. And do it in really slow motion. And feel, what do you do in your sit bones? As you're lifting your hand, if you rock a little forward on your sit bone, the arm becomes easier to get up to the top of the head. And then as you bring the hand back down, rock back on your sit bones so that your sit bones help you lift the arm and bring it down. You don't have to do the full motion, but it's just feeling how when you tilt the socket in the arm, It moves better. Yeah, good. Let the arms just hang down for a moment. And roll both thumbs while they're hanging down towards your body. So you make a slight fist and you roll your thumbs towards your body, which rolls your shoulders in and pulls your shoulder blades away from you. And then roll your thumbs the opposite way, which makes you push your chest forward a little and look up. You can leave the arms down by your sides. You don't need to hold them up right now. Yeah, okay. And then like this, take one thumb forward and the other thumb backward. And see how it makes your shoulders rotate a little bit. It's kind of like you're turning one shoulder to the camera in front of you and one shoulder goes behind. Good, and rest. So I'm going to take a moment now and share my screen and share an animation of arms and shoulders working together. So just a sec while I share, and I want this one, and I want it full screen, and share. Okay, so are you seeing a nice full screen picture? How about give me a thumbs up if you're, I can only see a few people who are doing this. Okay, good. So, and do you see my cursor move as I move the cursor? Yeah, okay. So this bone is this collarbone. This bone back here is your shoulder blade. And this is just, I'm going to show a motion of hanging your arm by your side with the thumb going out and the thumb going in. So see how the shoulder blade slides. I'm using my hand, you can't see my hand, but it goes closer to your spine. And then when the thumb rotates in, it goes away from your spine. So there's the thumb going out, and go ahead and do this motion with it, seeing if you can feel those bones. I'm going to back it up a little bit and do that one again. So you can hang your arm down there, you thumb goes out away from you. So the thumb goes away from you and back to neutral. The thumb goes away from you and back to neutral. I'm going to stop it for a sec. And when you're doing that, how many other bones did you notice moving in your body? You could just sit there for a moment now that you're not looking at the animation. Close your eyes for a moment and feel how when you take your thumb and you point it behind you, that if you press your chest forward a little, it's easier to do the motion. If you come a little forward over that sit bone, if you shift your weight onto that sit bone, it moves your ribs a little, and by moving your ribs, it gives your shoulder blade an ability to slide around your back. So now we're going to play with the movements of rolling your thumb forward. And those are the motions that if you combine it with rolling back on your sit bone and looking down a little, it gets easier. But we'll go through it a couple times. First, watch it on the screen. And you can see there's movement right at this joint in your sternum. Your shoulder blade pulls away from your spine. But the movements you do underneath to get your ribs a little out of the way and to fold your body along your sternum make it easier. Okay, let me stop that. So do that motion yourself a few times, rolling the thumb in and feeling, you could put your fingers right on your joint between your sternum and your collarbone and feel that to rotate the thumb in toward your body, there has to be a fold there. It's so weird to me that I think it was one of my biggest insights as I started doing Feldenkrais, that why I had neck and shoulder pain was that I didn't realize this joint here has to move in so many ways in order for our arms to be comfortable. And there's no way your neck and your shoulders can be happy if this joint isn't moving. So as you could reach forward with your arm now, like you were reaching to pick something up out of the screen, and with your finger on that joint, you can feel how your collarbone goes forward. And if you take your elbow back, your collarbone has to go back. And that joint right there is one of the most important joints in the body. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this video, which shows some other shoulder movements. And feel free to do them along with the video, but sensing, what are you moving underneath? So here we're going to just raise and lower the shoulder. And each time the video shows it from different sides, but you can see that joint moving in the manubrium. You can see the shoulder blade going away. And you can see how close those ribs are right underneath. And so any movement in these ribs helps make it easier to move the shoulder. Now it's going to lower the shoulder. So this joint, the collarbone goes down. So here, this is the motion of reaching forward to punch. I mean, the arm's not rotating up, but the shoulder is getting ready for a punch forward. And if you try that motion in yourself of punching forward, feel how your sit bones and that rounding that you can, and the twisting, if you twist your torso, it's a little easier to do that. So here's the motion of reaching behind you. You're in the car, you drop the car keys down in that little nasty place between the door and there, that reaching the arm back to pick something up. And this joint has to move in order to do that. And if you bring your sternum with that joint, then the arm can go back behind. And there's raising your arm. And when the three bones all have to work together as a team to make the shoulder happy. But to me, in order to raise my hand, if I push the ribs over like we were doing when we had the sword attached to the rib, so much easier because you get the ribs out of the way underneath. And there's so many directions an arm can move. So there's the motion of brushing your hair, of lifting your hand to your head, and see how far the scapula has to come out away from your spine. I'm going to pause for a sec. Anybody here have rotator cuff problems? Because the rotator cuff are the muscles that are all from the inside here going to here. And if the shoulder blade doesn't come with the arm, that's when those muscles rip. All right, I think that's probably enough of the playing the video, so I'm going to stop the share. And just as you sit there, close your eyes for a moment and feel the fabric, the distance between your two shoulders in the front and in the back. Are you feeling a little bit more even in the tension between those than you were at the beginning? And the tension between the fabric, the line on the front of yourself from your pubic bone to the top of your sternum and from the base of your neck down to your sacrum, is the amount of tension between the front and back evened out a little bit? Because it's the tension, the evenness of the tension front and back, that's what allows us to support our head over our body and to feel like we're upright in space. And the coordination of the arms and the back that make that easy. And let's try some of the motions. Whoops. There we go. Just got to get out of full screen on my other machine. That the motions that we played with in the beginning of reaching to scratch your back. See if you have just a little bit more torso movement involved, and see if that helps you reach more places. If you change your weight on your sit bone, can your arms reach a little further? Or if you want to throw a ball, if it's a little easier to turn your body and prep, like when you see the baseball pitchers pitching, they don't stand with their chest right to you and throw the ball. Try that. Try keeping your chest flat and throw a ball. It's like, wham! It's going to just land on the floor right in front of you. But if you start by taking your chest and turning it, that's when you can get that power into the ball. Yeah. Or to do a necklace, just as you begin to lift your hands to go to the back of your neck, push your chest out, come forward on your sit bones, and then it becomes a little easier to reach the hands a little bit higher. So these motions of the ribs are what allows the freedom of the arms. So I'm going to unmute, and I'd love questions, comments. When I unmute everybody, not everybody gets unmuted, so if you didn't, you can unmute yourself, but wave your hand and I'll... Anyone have some observations of what changed for them in just the sensation of sitting up after this?
Is that the software available to try that at home?
I just searched on YouTube for shoulder animation. And I looked at a couple shoulder animation ones until I found one that was showing what I wanted to show. But on YouTube, there are wonderful, wonderful anatomy videos. And yeah.
I didn't know that.
Some of them go into too much depth. In the Feldenkrais world, we just think skeletons. We don't really think about the muscles or the ligaments. But if you can get the skeleton, when our brain makes a map of our skeleton and we start really sensing where is that bone in my body, then we can use it more efficiently and we don't hurt ourselves. So I would stick, if you're going on YouTube looking at anatomy, do animated skeleton.
I'll find it.
Thank you.
Any other ahas of, like in the beginning you talked about what you do with your hands for fun and what were some challenges with your hands. I'd love to hear what some of the challenges are and some of the fun things.
I get numbness in my fingers when I play guitar for too long.
Okay, let me just see if I can find a picture in this front view. There's a whole bunch of nerves that come right from the neck and they go underneath this bone. And if the top ribs are not mobile, then the nerve can get pinched. And that nerve getting pinched up here is what causes the numbness further down. So the more that this sternal clavicular, there we go, that joint is mobile, and the more your whole rib cage can do this side bending motion, the less likely that pinching can happen in the neck. And the more you get the rest of your spine mobile, then there's more room for the nerve to travel and it doesn't pinch. So as you're holding the guitar there, I'm wondering if you're holding your shoulder up a little bit the whole time you're playing, and if you can allow it to lengthen down behind you a little bit, if that will allow a little more room and a little more comfort. It's just a watching. When do you lift your shoulders and when do you not? A lot of us with anxiety, if we're worried if we can or can't do something, we take our shoulders and just lift them a little. Everybody try that a little. Lift your shoulders, and you feel how it kind of shortens the back of your neck, and it just like feels balled up in there. And then let the shoulders come down, and there's just more spaciousness in the back of the neck. There's also, if you're playing, I don't know if you're looking at music when you're doing that, but that can also, if it's hard to see or we're on the computer, we tend to do that motion of lifting the shoulder and being a little turtle, and that can irritate those nerves.
I think part of it is because there's a lot of pressure that you have to put in that. It's just pinching that area. So I understand I'll work on that shoulder, but if you went in and you're putting pressure in this funky position, like this whole hand just kind of cramps up.
So it might have to do with where you are on your sit bones as well, because if you can try pinching your fingers together. Everybody try this. It's really quite interesting. Lean back in your chair, kind of slump back, and squeeze your fingers together and feel the power that they have, and feel where you tighten in the back of your shoulder. And then come forward on your sit bones, so you're on that flat spot, and see if you can squeeze a little harder with your fingers with a little less tension in the back of your neck.
Cool.
So there's something about how you organize under yourself so that the muscles are available for squeezing and not involved in holding up your shoulder and your arm. Those are some things to experiment with.
That's crazy.
If we're not supported, our arms aren't very strong. But when we have our sit bones underneath, not only does it hold up our head so our posture's better and our neck's more comfortable, but our arms are freer to move. What were some of the other challenge areas?
I have a question.
Yeah.
With my right hand, when I use it, this finger gets stuck over this finger. Can you see?
Yes. I'm just playing with it in my own body because that's how I figure out like what's going on.
My hand is basically very stiff anyway, but anytime I use it, like for cutting with a knife or using a gardening tool.
Okay, let's everybody play with a little something. Put your hand kind of where you can see it, and cross your third finger over your fourth. And see if there's a subtle weight shift in your body where you shift over onto one sit bone a little. And it's probably, if it's your right hand, if you shift onto your right sit bone, it's probably easier to do this cross in your finger. And so sometimes our bodies do that little cross because it helps bring us back to center. It's like our brain comes up with the strangest things to make us feel safe, like we're not going to fall over. This happens in people's feet as well. That cross happens and it does a subtle weight shift. So it's like that finger has decided it's the thing that's going to keep you upright and not falling over to the side. And
Amazing.
so playing with shifting your weight a little bit to the other sit bone and see if you shift the weight to the other sit bone and use your hand, if that might make it have less of a desire to cross.
Mhm.
My feet actually play a big part in doing this. I noticed my foot moves
Yes.
a lot.
You can feel how you have to push into one foot
Mhm.
to cross, and if you shift the other way on your feet, it helps you uncross. So working on the general balance things that we've been working on here can help with that to some extent. I mean, to some extent, this is more common with people who have Parkinson's than with people who don't having that. And I think it's just the brain's desperate search for stability. It's going to do whatever it can to do that. But thinking about it that way, instead of thinking about, I have this evil finger that always wants to cross, but thinking, all right, thank you, finger, you're trying to help keep me safe. Changes your attitude toward it, and you begin to get curious of what can you do with your sit bones to relax the hand. How can you get yourself under your shoulder so that your arm's relaxed, and then those problems can begin to resolve themselves.
So I have that same thing where your hands cross up sometimes from either sewing too much or playing guitar. But then when I roller skate, my toes, I'll pull off my boot and my toes will be all
Yeah, I have that problem too.
Yeah, the toes have discovered that it helps with your upright stability when they cross, and the hands have discovered that it helps with your, in both sewing and guitar, people often freeze their body. I have to tell a little story. The woman I study with is a woman named Anat Banyel. She's down in California. And she got hired by the San Francisco Symphony because they were having all the musicians going out ill, taking sick leave because they had repetitive stress injuries in their body. And this was weird. These people have been playing for the symphony for years. What happened? Why now did this go as a rash through the whole group? And she went to observe the symphony in a practice session, and they had a new guest conductor, and this new guest conductor really liked the way it looked when musicians stayed still when they played. And she just like got up and waved her hand and said, "Stop, this is what's causing this. You have to be able to move in order for, like, if you're playing a violin and your bow moves, your weight has to shift on your sit bones. And once everybody started shifting around and playing, letting themselves move their whole body, the problems went away. And you laugh, but Yoshi, I bet that's what you're doing. That you're holding yourself still.
Just shift a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing probably goes to roller skating. So it's not just the musicians, and I thought maybe it was just as we get older, this is just bound to happen.
No, it is not. It is not bound to happen. And even if you have Parkinson's, it's not bound to happen. The more you practice your skills at shifting your weight and learning how to use your whole body to get from one side to the other, then the extremities, these tiny little muscles down here and in our feet, don't have to work so hard because you're using the core muscles in your body to move for the bigger movements. So that's I think a great place to leave things for today. This has been a really fascinating session. I'm glad we've had some time to talk at the end, because it really is the what's underneath everything I try to teach in Feldenkrais is do it from your sit bones. If you have your hand on your mouse from your sit bones. If you're cooking, cook from your sit bones.
So just basically put Latin music in the background and just...
Absolutely. Yeah, because then the chores that were making you feel tense and sore up in here become a dance. Unload your dishwasher to music. Nothing to do with your arms. It with Parkinson's, it also helps give you the rhythm, which sometimes gets lost in the brain, so that you can move a little faster as you're doing something. If you want to be moving faster, a little faster song will do it. But it cues the brain to use the whole self to move to it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, everybody, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yes,
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.